Today, we're diving into a really fascinating puzzle. How on earth do you make sense of a figure as chaotic and, let's be honest, as controversial as Elon Musk? Well, to figure it out, we're going to borrow the mental toolkit from another Silicon Valley giant, Peter Thiel, and his book 0 to 1. We're going to see if Thiel's entire framework for building the future can help explain why the public has such a wildly divided love him or hate him reaction to one of the people who's supposedly doing just that.
So let's just jump right into the fire, shall we? This comment, from a really heated Reddit thread about Musk, it just perfectly captures the conflict we're exploring today. You've got these world-changing innovations on one side, electric cars, reusable rockets, and on the other, you have behavior that a lot of people just find totally unacceptable. So is this kind of personality a bug, or is it somehow a feature of creating something brand new? That is the question at the heart of all this.
To really get to the bottom of it, here's our game plan. We're going to start with Peter Thiel's core idea about creating something from nothing. Then we'll get into his really radical case for monopolies. From there, we'll build a profile of the kind of person it takes to do this, what Thiel calls the founder. Then we'll see how that profile stacks up against the public's view of Elon Musk, before we end on a much, much bigger question about how we actually invent the future.
Okay, let's dive right in with Thiel's most fundamental idea. This is the bedrock his whole philosophy is built on, the huge difference between just copying what's already here and creating what comes next. He calls it going from 0 to 1.
What Thiel's saying here is that real progress, the important kind, isn't about making a slightly better mousetrap. True innovation is almost like magic. It's about creating something where there was nothing before. It's that leap from 0 to 1. See, doing what we already know how to do just gives us more of the same. But creating something new, that's when you really change the world. So he breaks down all human progress into these two camps. First, there's horizontal progress, or going from 1 to n. Think of this as globalization. It's taking something that works, say a smartphone, and making it available everywhere. Then you have vertical progress, that leap from 0 to 1. That's what he calls technology. And for Thiel, technology isn't just about computers and code. It's any new and better way of doing things.
And here is his big, provocative argument. Everyone seems obsessed with globalization, right? But Thiel believes that technology, that 0 to 1 leap, is what really matters for our future. Why? Well, just imagine a world where everyone tries to live the way people do in developed countries, using today's tech. It would be an absolute disaster. We'd have ecological collapse and probably wars over resources. Without new technology, globalization just means we all fight harder for the same small piece of the pie.
Okay, so this brings us to his next big idea. And this is where things get really interesting and, for a lot of people, pretty controversial. If your goal is to create something totally new and valuable, the last thing you want is a fight. In fact, Thiel says what you really want to build is a monopoly.
Now this flips everything we're taught about business completely on its head. We learn that competition is good, right? That it's the healthy engine of the economy. Thiel says that's basically a myth. He argues that competition is a brutal, destructive force that crushes profits and makes companies fixate on their rivals instead of on creating something new. The goal isn't to be the best in the crowded field. It's to create a whole new field where you're the only one in it.
So think of the business world as a spectrum. On one end, you've got perfect competition. This is a bloodbath where nobody makes any real money. Think of airlines or most restaurants. But on the other end, you have a monopoly, like Google in search. A company that's so good at what it does that it doesn't have to worry about competitors. And because of that, it has the freedom and the cash to think long-term, to work on crazy moonshot ideas, and to actually take care of its people.
So what does one of these creative monopolies look like? Thiel boils it down to 4 things. First, you need proprietary tech that's not just a little better, but at least 10 times better than anything else out there. Second, network effects, where the more people use your product, the better it gets for everyone. Think Facebook. Third, economies of scale, meaning your business gets stronger and more efficient as it grows. And finally, a brand that's so powerful it's a monopoly all by itself. Think Apple.
Thiel often compares competition to war. It might sound heroic in stories, but in reality, it's just this incredibly costly, all-consuming slog. Companies get so obsessed with what their rivals are doing, the latest feature, the newest ad campaign, that they just end up copying each other. They stop thinking about the customer, and they stop creating anything truly new.
This is a perfect example of what he's talking about. Remember when Square came out with that little credit card reader you could plug into your phone? It was a true 0 to 1 innovation. And what happened next? a flood of copycats. PayPal made one shaped like a triangle. Someone else made one shaped like a cylinder. Everybody started fighting over shapes and fees instead of inventing the next big thing in finance. That is the dead end of competition.
So if the mission is to build a 0-to-1 company, a creative monopoly, what kind of person can actually pull that off? This brings us to one of Thiel's most powerful ideas, what he calls the founder's paradox.
Founders, in Thiel's world, are walking contradictions. They are not these well-rounded, middle-of-the-road people. They have to be an insider, they need to understand the world as it is to raise money and build a team, but they also have to be an outsider, someone who sees the world with fresh eyes, spots all its flaws, and can imagine something completely different. They're in the system, but they're not of the system.
Yeah, Thiel says that while most of us have traits that cluster around the average, founders live at the extremes. They can be incredibly charismatic and inspiring one moment, and then brooding and impossible to work with the next. They might be technically broke, crashing on a couch, but be a billionaire on paper. They attract both intense loyalty and intense hatred, sometimes from the very same people. And the companies they create are just as extreme. On one end of the spectrum, you've got a normal office full of people who are just there for a paycheck. Thiel calls this nihilism. On the other extreme, you have an actual cult, driven by blind faith. A 0-to-1 startup lives in this weird, powerful space right in between. It's a team of super talented people, all fanatically united by a single concrete mission for the future. You could almost call it a cult for a good cause.
Okay, so let's take this whole abstract idea, the 0-to-1 creator, the monopoly builder, the paradoxical founder, and let's get real. Let's apply it to probably the most visible and definitely the most controversial founder on the planet today, Elon Musk.
So now, we're going to shift gears. We're moving away from the nice, clean theories in a book and into the messy, passionate, contradictory world of what people actually think. We're going to look at real comments from a Reddit thread about Musk to see how the public tries to make sense of a real-life founder in all his messy glory.
And boom, right away you see Thiel's idea of living at the extremes in action. The reactions aren't just meh, they are at the absolute poles. For one person, Musk is a history-making genius. For another, he's a mentally ill crook. There is absolutely no middle ground here. This is the fame and infamy Thiel was talking about, playing out right in front of us.
And this deep divide applies directly to how people see his leadership. Is he this incredible hands-on manager who gets in the trenches with his team to solve impossible problems? Or is he a narcissistic bully who terrifies his employees? The crazy thing is, in the public's mind, the answer seems to be both. The exact same actions get seen as either visionary or tyrannical. It just depends on who you ask.
Now, this is really fascinating because this isn't two different people arguing. This is one person holding all these contradictory ideas in their head at the same time. They start by saying his accomplishments are impressive, of course. They can't deny the results. But then they immediately unload this list of brutal criticisms: insane turnover, pathological behavior, screwing over his own brother. It's the founder's paradox in a single comment: the genius and the monster, all wrapped up in one.
And look at this, even his origin story is a total battleground. Was he a self-made outsider, or was he a privileged insider born with a silver spoon? The public is fiercely divided, and the truth depends entirely on who you choose to believe. This fits Thiel's insider/outsider archetype to a T. The story itself is a paradox. This comment right here just nails it. It gets to the very heart of the issue. That quality of being constantly in emergency mode is seen as the source of both his greatest successes and his biggest failures as a leader. It's what allows him to push through impossible odds, but it's the exact same thing that burns people out and creates chaos. The feature is the bug. So all of this leads us to our final, and maybe the most important question of all. If founders are these strange, difficult, paradoxical people, what is it about them that actually lets them build a different future? Is it just dumb luck, or is there something else going on? You know, it's become really popular for successful people to say, oh, I was just lucky. Thiel thinks that's mostly nonsense. He points out that when someone like Musk creates multiple different billion-dollar companies in totally different industries, PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla, you got to think there's more than just luck at play. There has to be a definite plan. So he maps out how we think about the future in this really clever way. You can be optimistic or pessimistic, and you can have a definite or indefinite view. A definite view means you think you can shape the future. An indefinite view means you think it's all random. Thiel's big diagnosis is that we, today, live in an age of indefinite optimism. We just generally assume the future will get better, but we have no real plan for how.
We're just kind of hoping for the best.
The founder, though, operates from a totally different place. They live in a world of definite optimism. This is the powerful, almost old-fashioned belief that the future will be better because I am going to make it better. It's the mindset that built the great bridges and dams and sent people to the moon. It's not about hoping for a better future. It's about having a blueprint and the sheer will to make it real.
And this is the whole point, right? When you strip everything else away, the public fight over Musk is really a fight about his definite optimism. This comment from a supporter lays out the case perfectly. The argument is that without Musk's specific, concrete, relentlessly driven plans, we just wouldn't have these things at scale. Progress isn't some automatic force of nature. It has to be willed into being by someone with a plan.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The very thing that defines the founder, this definite, unwavering vision for a different future, is exactly what makes them so polarizing. To have a concrete plan means you believe you know better than everyone else. And that kind of conviction can easily look like arrogance or narcissism or even madness to people who don't share that vision.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. We started with a comment asking if we really want a society full of these assholes. But through Thiel's framework, we've seen that maybe these difficult, abrasive personality traits are inseparable from the ability to create something from nothing. So is this paradox, this volatile mix of genius and controversy, the necessary price we have to pay for going from 0 to 1? Is it a bug we should try to fix, or is it an essential feature of inventing the future?